Maybe you've given up wine because it seems to wreck your morning after worse than anything else. Well, before you pick up that boozy seltzer water, here are 4 reasons your wine hangover is worse and what to do about it. It's Pocket Wine School. Hi, I'm Tommy with Pocket Wine School, the channel where we learn wine by cutting through the myths, jargon, and pseudoscience. Right now, we're talking about wine hangovers, why they might be hitting you harder than other drinks, and what you can do about it. And a quick note, if you found this video because you are currently experiencing a wine hangover, you can skip to the end for suggestions on how to find the nearest toilet. First, you may have a genetic mutation. That's right, there's a genetic mutation that makes you more prone to hangovers of any kind. And a mutation like that will make you the lamest X-Man ever. But to understand this mutation, let's take a look at what a hangover is in general and how it happens, other than the obvious, Captain, let's end the night with a round of fireball shots. The simplest model for understanding hangovers is that your body is undergoing alcohol withdrawal. This is why hair of the dog both works and is a terrible idea. It's like saying, my buddy's having a rough time with heroin withdrawal, so I shot him up with a little heroin just to get him back up on his feet again. Hair of the dog, my friend. The more complicated and accurate way to understand this vomitous phenomenon is to examine the role of acetaldehyde, both in winemaking and in the body. Acetaldehyde is a natural and organic product, just like cyanide, strychnine, and arsenic. It occurs in ripe fruit, bread, and coffee, really anything that ferments. It's a product of fermentation in the sense that it's what happens when ethanol, the real reason you drink wine, no matter what your Vivino profile says, is oxidized. Just like ethanol, acetaldehyde is a toxin. And as long as you decide to drink alcohol, you can't get away from acetaldehyde, even if someone sells you a machine called Dr. Drunkard's acetaldehyde remover. That's because when your liver metabolizes ethanol, the very first step is to turn it into acetaldehyde. Now, before you take a baseball bat to your wine cellar, there's a light at the end of your liver. The second phase of ethanol metabolization is the conversion of acetaldehyde into the harmless acetic acid, a substance you will know from the bottle of balsamic crusting over in your cabinet, which is then passed from the body through urine. In other words, after a night of hard drinking, you are literally pissing vinegar. And again, this is all a natural process, like earthquakes, tsunamis, and the slow march toward death. Most people's bodies are entirely equipped to process acetaldehyde. The trouble we encounter is when we overload our systems with ethanol by drinking too much at once. We create a backlog of acetaldehyde, which makes us feel like we've scooped out our insides and refilled our hollow shells with the flaming turds of Lucifer. But here's where genetics comes in. Most people are able to metabolize a unit of alcohol, roughly 5 ounces of wine, in about an hour, sort of like a lens crafters that actually makes your vision worse. But there are some people whose DNA prevents them from producing sufficient ALDH, the enzyme that turns acetaldehyde into acetic acid. So it takes them much, much longer to recover from even a minor night of drinking. And on the flip side, there are other genetic mutations which make some people extremely efficient at metabolizing the bad stuff, like superhumanly efficient. And there is one patient in particular who has been sought by scientists for some time for his uncanny ability to almost instantly metabolize alcohol. Ozzy freaking Osbourne. This is not a joke. So if the X-Men ever need to save America by emptying a tanker truck filled with Beaujolais, all they need to do is call on the one they call Crazy Train. Second, you may be female. Actually, you probably know whether or not you're female. If you don't, I wish you the best on your journey of discovery. But it does seem to be the case that women are significantly more prone to hangovers than their male counterparts. While this has traditionally been attributed to a size difference, modern science has shown that a more likely culprit is that estrogen levels have a positive correlation with production of acetaldehyde. The key helper here may simply be increased water consumption. Alcohol, in addition to making that creepy guy from work seem more attractive, does dehydrate you. This makes it more difficult to flush out acetaldehydes, increasing the risk of nausea, sweating, headaches, and screaming at your spouse for breathing too loud. Third, you may be sensitive to congeners. Here's where we begin to get much more wine specific. Congeners are a catch-all alcohol term for things produced during fermentation other than ethanol. There are many different kinds of congeners. And while they do occur to some degree in all alcohol, they are particularly prevalent in darker types of alcohol, like whiskey and especially red wine. What makes them so tough is that our bodies can't process them. So why have them? Well, because they're a big part of what makes alcohol so tasty. They contribute greatly to the flavors of red wine and are essentially the only things giving dark liquor its flavor. Congeners can be filtered out, although many producers believe that this strips the beverage of its nuances, sort of like adapting a British television show for American audiences. This can be a double-edged sword. Many people flock to natural wines or minimal intervention wines under the theory that they are both better for you and more expressive of the terroir. The latter may be true, and that's the topic for another video, but at least where hangovers are concerned, the philosophical purity of unfiltered wines may not actually be the best for your morning after health. Although, to be fair, when has absolute philosophical purity ever been good for anyone's health? Fourth, you may be misplacing your faith. Now, I'm not talking about religion here. Unless your religion is the cult of Dionysus, and then yes, absolutely, your religion is the reason behind those massive hangovers. Although I'm betting it's worth every Advil. So, we've talked before on this channel about the lack of connection between sulfites and headaches. The entire wine industry and medical industry has talked about it at this point, so if you aren't sold on the idea by now, we will all have to cut our losses, move on, and raise our children as best we can in separate households. I'm sure they will turn out great. Nevertheless, there are still some satellite beliefs that should be addressed even if you still believe sulfites are to blame for your headaches. The main one here is that Old World wines, largely meaning French, Italian, and Spanish wines, though that's not all of them, don't have additives, while New World wines, and here people usually mean American, do. So here is a brief selection from a list of roughly 50 additives. Potassium ferrocyanide, dimethyl dicarbonate, thiamine hydrochloride, copper sulfate, aluminosilicates, and polyvinyl polypyrrolidone. These are not, as it might sound, the ingredients of a Kit Kat bar, including the foil wrapper. No, these are all ingredients allowed in wine by the European Union. And they're not necessarily rare. For instance, copper sulfate is used to remove foul odors, and aluminosilicates are used to clarify the wine. Moreover, it's absolutely not true that French and Italian winemakers don't add sulfites to their wine. In fact, if you get a certified organic wine from France or Italy, a small amount of added sulfites is permissible. Certified organic from the United States allows no added sulfites. In other words, don't put all your eggs into one continental basket. Instead, pay attention to what you drink and how quickly you drink it. And if you can only focus on one thing at a time, make sure it's the how quickly and how much. All the hangover tricks in the world can't outrun a pony keg on an empty stomach. Happy puking!